I have Dr. Samson Simon, Chief Economist, ARKK Economics and Data Limited. Thank you so much, Dr. Simon, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Now, the NIPC generated 9.2 billion naira from pioneer status fees in 4 years. However, tax waivers granted by the government totaled about 6 trillion naira annually. So considering the significant revenue loss, is the current pioneer status program economically viable and sustainable in the long run?
Well, I believe it's viable, it's sustainable, but we need to have all our facts. We need to put it on balance and see, well, what are the benefits that have accrued over the years because of these tax waivers. And we clearly know the costs. We're talking about 6 trillion naira on a yearly basis, according to Taiwo Oyedele, the chair of the Presidential Tax Reform Committee. It is more than clear how much this is costing us in terms of revenue loss. But in terms of the benefits, we need to have the benefits too. Then we compare, do the benefits outweigh the costs or the loss that these particular waivers have cost or not. I think the jury is still out. We tend to be fixated on the costs, but I think it's the wrong way of looking at things. We have to look at it both sides, then we can draw a conclusion. And these tax waivers, they're not just a Nigerian thing. They're done all over the world, and they're very important because you want to encourage investment to come in. You want to retain investment that are investments that are already within the country. We just listened to Dr. Vincent. So many investors are leaving the country. So you don't want them to leave. You want them to remain here. Some of these tax waivers are given to these people so that they remain despite some of the harsh realities. And if we say we don't want to give tax waivers to people, then what else are we going to do to encourage investors to come in, to return the investment that we have, to promote export, to encourage growth in employment? So these tax waivers are necessary, though they need to be transparent. Taiwo Oyedele was very explicit about that they need to be very transparent, they need to be equitable. It should not be because I know somebody in government that I should have tax waivers or because I have political connection. No, it should be on the need basis. If a particular aspect of the economy or a particular company needs a particular tax waiver, and that company or activity or sector of the economy is so important, why not give such all the tax waivers the person or the entity will be requiring?
Well, Dr. Simon, you said it is viable, but then we see that the government's granted, when you look at it in total, what is expected is about 6 trillion naira. But then we see 9.2 billion naira in accruals because of the Pioneer Status Program and about 125.74 billion naira from the new companies. You look at the wide margin and you still want to say it is viable because, of course, like you said, it's not only about local companies or investors. We're looking at both the foreign and the local investors when we look at the target sectors. So are you still saying this is viable, or there are some inhibitions that is making it impossible for us to actually hit the targets?
There was a particular study that was done, and we need to do something similar for recent times. I think it should be 2010 to 2015, the tax waivers, and that study looked at how much it cost the Nigerian state and the benefits that the state got in return. And that study concluded that it was worth it granting those tax waivers. So in the same manner, I know that, forget the 9.2 billion that the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council has generated is next to nothing. When you put it side by side, when you juxtapose it with 6 trillion, it's nothing. It's insignificant, it's inconsequential. But that's not the reason why you're granting waivers, not because you want to collect fees from these companies. You are granting waivers because you want to attract investment. You want investors to come into Nigeria. You want investors that are in Nigeria to remain in Nigeria. You want to spur export. And Nigeria export next to nothing. Oil and gas alone is responsible for almost 80 to 90% of our merchandise export. So we need to work on that. And these tax waivers can be deployed. They might not have been deployed as effectively as they should. They may not have been transparent because maybe there's a lot of corruption people, the Nigerian state or people are being changed for political reasons. So those are the things we need to work on. But the more we're fixated on the costs, because it's costing us 6 trillion per year, and we forget about the benefits that we're getting in return. I remember for subsidy in the same manner, but we were talking about how much it was costing us. We didn't look at the benefits that these subsidies might have been given to Nigerian people in the Nigerian state. We removed subsidy and we've seen the costs. So we should not just be fixated on the costs. We should look at the benefits too. It's very important. And the benefits should not be limited to the fees that the Nigerian Investment Promotion Council collects. It is way beyond that. That's not even the reason why you set up, you allow tax waiver. So you should not even factor that in. It's insignificant.
Okay, so even as we wrap up, Dr. Simon, now there are plans to review and reduce tax waivers given to companies operating in Nigeria. Currently, what about 6 trillion as we know it. Now, is that a wise move when you look at the high amount of revenue lost to waivers granted every year, or are there some kind of modifications that you would expect to strike a balance?
Of course, there should be a lot of modifications. We need to tweak it. And the number one thing we need to do is around transparency. It should be very transparent. Any atom of corruption should be taken out of these tax waivers. People should not be getting tax waivers because they're politically connected. It should not be about political connection. It should not be about the people that you know. It should be because such an entity, whether it's a company or it's an individual or a sector of the economy, is so important for the economy, and the government is trying to stimulate that. So that should be the basis. So it can be made better, and thankfully the Taiwo Daily Committee is looking into that. So we believe they would come up with recommendations based on the findings, empirical proof that we need to tweak this.
Okay, so before I let you go, just permit me to keep just this one question in. Now, the reports, according to what we read, mentioned that 8 companies applied for extensions, but just about 2 were granted the recalls. Now, when you look at the criteria, what would you say it's like? Would you say it's stringent? Would you say it applies to the objectives of why that particular pioneer status initiative was actually created? Or do you think that it could also be tinkered with to further encourage the incentivization for these companies?
Well, a lot of these companies have abused these tax waivers. For example, the pioneer status incentive. If you're a new company, you might be struggling because of teething problems, so you're granted tax waivers. So some of established companies within, what they do is they set up an arm and then they want to claim these tax waivers. And it's not really good for the Nigerian economy. So another thing we need to consider is that these tax waivers are normally, for the pioneer status in particular, for 3 years, and with the possibility of extension up to 2 years. So after you have done your 3 years, the authorities concerned will look at what you have done, the benefits expected. If it's worth it, if you actually need that extension, they'll grant you such extension. But if in all honesty, they look at it and the evidence does not support an extension, they wouldn't grant. That was why they refused to grant extensions for all the companies that applied for such. And I think it's within their right to do that.
All right, Dr. Samson Simon, Chief Economist, ARKK Economics and Data Limited. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap on today's edition of our Business Edge.